When I was a sophomore in high school, I had never been in a school play before, but I auditioned for a part in the drama. It was what we were doing was this play Harvey. Maybe you've heard of it. That they made a great movie out of it with Jimmy Stewart. But in this play Harvey, it's about a guy named Elwood P. Dowd. And Elwood P. Dowd has this imaginary friend who is a 6 foot tall rabbit. And so it's a great thing. But so I auditioned for it. I got a small part, just like a page of lines, which was great because I had never been in a play before. But about 3 weeks before rehearsals, I got a call from our director. The guy who was supposed to play the lead, a senior, had dropped out. And she said, "Chris, you were really our first choice, but since you were a sophomore and Jason was a senior, we decided to give it to him. But he's out now, and so we need you to step in and to do the lead part." Now, there was only about a month left before the show. I had never been in a play before. How in the world was I going to learn all of those lines? I was so nervous. On top of that, about 2 weeks before the thing before we did it, I got sick and I was out of school for about a week. And so I had like 3 weeks to memorize all these lines from the script, but I did it because I lived with that script. I carried it around with me everywhere. I had dreams of going out on stage and forgetting my lines. I still do to this day. Like I have dreams about that. And so I made sure that I knew all of those lines. I not only knew my lines, but I knew everybody else's lines so that I knew the cues when to come in. But I became that character. I really did. I was Elwood P. Dowd all the time. I would walk around school and I would be talking up here like this to my imaginary 6 foot, because he was 6 feet tall, you know. So I had to look up here and people thought I was crazy. But here's what happened. I became Elwood P. Dowd. Now, this wasn't a bad thing. Actually, people preferred that I was Elwood P. Dowd. Yeah. So I was with my girlfriend one day, and I wasn't in character. It was just her and I was grumpy. I was irritable. I was sick. I was complaining about the play. She said to me, "You know, I like you a lot better as Elwood P. Dowd. Why don't you be him again for a while, right?" She was saying, "Hey, you need to flip that script that you're in right now and go back to another one." Wasn't a bad thing to internalize that script and that character. But what if the script I had memorized and internalized wasn't good? What if it wasn't a positive person? And what if I continued to live by that script, unable to shake it, and just lived for it all the time? And in this series we're in called Flip the Script, what we're doing is we're identifying Satan's primary weapon, that he is a liar, that everything he says is a lie. John says that lying is his nature, that whenever he opens his mouth, out come lies. And he says these lies to us. He twists the truth. He's the master manipulator. And our enemy is always trying to hand us a script. Every day he hands you a script to read. He says, "Here, just read this." And it's full of lies about you. It's full of lies about God. But if we believe those lies, and even though we don't know we're doing it, we live by those lies, we actually start to believe those lies. Lies like, "Hey, you don't have what it takes." Lies like, "Hey, do whatever you want to do because God just wants you to be happy." Last week we talked about the lie, "Hey, you'll never change. Don't even try. You'll never change. That's always how you'll be." It's kind of desperate to hide mistakes when the only hope for healing and recovery is revealing them. So this morning I want to talk about the lie that says, hey, you don't have what it takes. And it's this lie of insecurity. Today we're going to be talking about you can fix it yourself. Pride and insecurity, they go together. And sometimes we struggle and we say, "You know what, I don't need help. Like I can fix this myself." Or maybe you say, you can fix it yourself. And usually when we say, "Hey, we can fix it ourselves," usually the it is not something relatively simple like the dishwasher or the garbage disposal. Usually the it that we think we can fix is some sort of inanimate thing. Maybe it's you. Maybe you're the it you're trying to fix, or maybe it's somebody else, or maybe the it is a financial situation. That's a big one. Financial situations. We think that we can fix it ourselves, that we don't need any help. And this is a script given by the enemy who wants us to be constantly stressed and arguing and stressed and pressured about money and to go deeper and deeper in debt. So a couple of things I just want to put on your radar, share with you. Coming up in November, going to do a series to help with this, and it's going to be practical biblical wisdom about finances. And it will really, really help you. And so that's coming in November. But then I'm really excited about this. In January of 2020, we're going to offer something called Financial Peace University. It's going to be right here at the church. You can sign up for it. It's going to be, I think, on Monday nights. But it will be incredibly helpful to you to have some peace about your finances. It's a Dave Ramsey course, and so be watching for more information about that. Sign up for Financial Peace University, but it will help you take charge in this area of your finances, because most of us need help. So the it that you think you can fix yourself might be financial, maybe it's an addiction, maybe it's a marriage struggle, or maybe, hey, how about this? Maybe it's a health issue. Like anybody out there just never go to the doctor? Like you just never go? Because it will go away, or I can fix it myself. That happens a lot. Maybe the it is a secret sin. And the enemy whispers, hey, you don't need any help with this. Don't tell anybody about this. What would people think? You'll be able to fix this one day. One day when you really get determined, you'll be able to fix this. And certainly don't bother God about it, because God, has so many things going on, and he really doesn't care about you anyway. So you'll be able to take care of this yourself. And it's this lie. It's this lie that I think is especially appealing to us in America, in our Western culture, because we put a premium on this idea of independence and self-sufficiency. We're self-starters, we're self-sustainers. We want to pick ourselves up by our own bootstraps. And it's kind of who we are. It marks our culture. And we're taught from an early age, you take your achievements and you put them in a case for everybody to see. Then you take your accomplishments and you frame them and you hang them on the wall. And it's a lie that seems to be embraced by our human nature, that we can fix everything ourselves. You think about some of the first words a child learns. Those of you that have had children, like what are some of the first words a child learns? I can do it what? By myself, right? I can do it by myself. And that's not all bad. We want our children to be self-sufficient. We want them to grow up independent and to learn to do things on their own. But if it comes at the expense of thinking that we can do things independent of God, then it's wrong. So the Bible gives us a lot of examples of people that were mistaken by this lie from the enemy. We'll look at a couple of them. First one comes right in the very first book of the Bible, Genesis chapter 16. Abraham and Sarah, they're told that they're going to have a son. And this son would not just be a son, but he would be the beginning of a great nation. And yet Sarah was past the age of childbearing. Some time passes and it doesn't happen, and she starts to think, well, probably God needs a little bit of help, because he's not doing it. So she decides she's going to fix it. She's going to take things into her own hands. And so here's the plan that she comes up with. In Genesis 16:2, she says to her husband, hey, go sleep with my maidservant. Perhaps I can build a family through her. Yeah, and so this is one of those many examples where he should have known better. He should have known that even though she said that, that's not really what she meant. And yet Abraham does it anyway. So he goes to her and gets this lady Hagar named pregnant, and then Sarah ends up getting pregnant as well. And there's all kinds of drama and conflict, as you might imagine. And even today, thousands of years later, much of the conflict between Muslims and Christians and Muslims and Jews can all be traced back to Abram and Sarah deciding, hey, we can fix this on our own. We don't need God's help. We can take care of it ourselves. 1 Samuel chapter 13 is another example. You have King Saul, who's not really that stable anyway. And it looks like to him he's got this great opportunity to attack the Philistines. But the window for him doing this is closing. And so he's waiting for the priest Samuel to come and to sort of bless this battle and to get God's blessing on it. But Samuel's taking his time and he's not getting there. And so Saul decides, I'm just going to do this by myself. I can handle it. And this is it for Saul. God lets Saul know through Samuel that because of his defiant act of independence, that he's going to lose he's going to lose the kingdom. It's going to be given to another man, a man after God's own heart, a man who strives to do what God says. But Samuel goes to Saul, and this is what he says. He says, Samuel, what have you done? Like, have you ever had anybody come to you and say that to you? What have you done? Husbands, have your wives ever come to you and said, what have you done, right? What have you done? You've done a foolish thing. You've not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. If you had, he would have established your kingdom over Israel for all time. But as it is now, your kingdom will not endure. And we see this many times in the New Testament. There's this group of false teachers called the Judaizers. And one of the primary lies that they were telling, one of the scripts that they were trying to sell people is that, well, you know, Jesus, yeah, he's good. Jesus was a good man, a good person, but you don't need him. You can do it yourself. If you work hard enough, if you keep the right rules, if you follow the right laws. It's this idea that God is nice, but really we can do everything on our own. And we just kind of buy into that. And if we buy into that for a long enough time, everything is going to come crashing down. It's going to cause significant problems and destruction if we try to do everything and never seek the Lord or others to help us. And the longer we go thinking that we can just fix it ourselves, the higher the stakes, the greater the potential for devastation. So I want to kind of go down 5 or 6 things that kind of happen, a progression of how things go. Well, first of all, it increases our pride. Like, I don't need anybody else. I don't need anyone else. I can do this. And the longer we go without recognizing that we need help, the higher the stakes. You know, there's a sense in which a child or a teenager, like we want them to go through hard times. We want them to fail at something so that they will learn. That they'll learn that they need help sometimes. We don't want them to have this blindly optimistic world view. Because the longer they wait to figure out that they have to get help sometimes, the higher the stakes are going to be. Another consequence is that it minimizes. When we buy into this lie, when we look at difficult things that we really, really need help on, and we say, well, that's nothing, I can handle it. We're minimizing the severity of what it is that we're trying to do. Well, like a great example, and this is a pretty tame one, but a great example would be home repairs. Like I'm not the home repair guy, but I've watched enough episodes of This Old House and Home Time that I can pretty much fix anything in my house. I could build one from scratch if I wanted to. Yeah, it's just that I've never tried to do that. And the couple things I've tried to do that I thought I could do didn't go very well. So my mom thought she would help me out one Christmas and got me the book Home Repair for Dummies. And I looked at it and I said to her, I said, you got the wrong book. I said, isn't there a series called Home Repair for Morons? Like, that would have been more along my line. But I think I can do things around the house and I just can't. I need help. I need to call somebody. And we come upon these big challenges in life, and I know, like, it can be a variety of things. You say, well, I can do it on my own. You just minimize how difficult it is. See, the enemy would love for you to look at your, I don't know, whatever, your drinking problem or your spending problem, your anger problem or your marriage problem or your lust problem. And he would love for you to think, hey, that's not really that big of a deal. Like, it's not, there are a lot of people that do a lot of worse stuff, so just don't worry about it. It minimizes sin. Another thing that it does is it just feeds guilt. It feeds guilt because a lot of us have grown up with the mentality, hey, if you make the mess, you clean it up. And we've been taught that and told that, and that is true. Like, when you've made messes that you can clean up, but what if you've made a mess of your life and you've scrubbed and you've scrubbed and you've scrubbed, but you just can't seem to clean it up on your own? And then you start to say to yourself, well, what's wrong with me? I should be able to take care of this. I'm a man. I should be able to conquer this. I should be able to clean this up. And you can't. And so now you live with this guilt that you can't clean it up. Next, it intensifies. Maybe a better word here is it worsens. It worsens the fallout. And then we find ourselves saying things like, I can't believe it got this bad. I can't believe it got that bad. You hear doctors talk about this a lot of times. I'm sure this has never happened to you, but you hear about doctors talking about somebody coming to see them with a pretty serious problem that had they gone to them months earlier, they might have been able to help more, but now it's gone too far, and they're not sure that they can help them because it's intensified. And now things are just absolutely overwhelming. Another consequence, and this is an important one, this attitude, this proud, prideful attitude, it robs us in our relationships of intimacy. Like I have to be able to be vulnerable to admit that I need help. And one of the hardest things to do, and probably mostly for men, but I think also women too, is to be vulnerable and to admit to somebody that, listen, I'm really struggling here. I need help. Instead of trusting somebody enough to be vulnerable and say, hey, I need help, we just keep it in the dark and we say, I got this. And I've experienced this many times in my marriage, thankfully mostly early on because I finally learned, where I had this idea that being a man meant that I could fix all of my problems. I didn't need to talk to anybody about my struggles. I'm the one that's supposed to take care. I'm the one that's supposed to fix things. I wanted to come home at the end of the day and be the strong one. I don't need any help. I am here to help. And so I look back and I realize how much that I needed help before I realized it. I needed my wife's wisdom. I needed her discernment. I needed her to speak different into different situations in my life, but I didn't tell her about it because I didn't want to be vulnerable. I didn't trust. And I look back and I say, how much not only would I have benefited from that, how much did I rob us of intimacy? Because there can be no intimacy without vulnerability. And it's crucial to be vulnerable with one another in a relationship if you want that relationship to grow. Here's the last thing that this pride lie does is it just continues to add fire upon fire, fueling hypocrisy. I can't let anybody know. Can't let anybody know how broke things really are. And so we live hypocritically. And that is so what the enemy wants. Like that is what he wants. He wants us to believe this lie because of the damage it'll do to our relationships. He knows the damage that it will do ultimately to us spiritually. And some of you are even now reading from that script. You read from it every day. I don't need any help. And you put on this front that you have it all together. You're hypocritical. And not that God is necessarily upset that you're a hypocrite, but he's more upset that the damage it's going to continue to do. And this enemy says of all things, don't go to God about it. Don't talk to God about it. I mean, God has enough things to do. He's got enough people to worry about. And yeah, there's probably a God up there somewhere looking down upon us, but he's not really intimately aware and concerned about our petty issues, right? It's like that horrible song. If you like the song, I'm sorry, but that horrible song by Bette Midler many years ago, God is watching you from a distance. Like, what kind of message is that? Like it's supposed to be a comforting message. It's not. The Bible says God is intimately involved in what's going on in your life, and he knows about it. And so the Hebrew writer addresses this in a very, very helpful way. Hebrews chapter 14, verses 14 through 16 says what it says. Because like where can we turn to? Where can we turn to? And here's what the Hebrew writer says. He says, so then, since we have a great high priest who has entered heaven, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to what we believe. This high priest of ours understands our weaknesses, for he faced all of the same testings or the same temptations as we did, and yet he did not sin. So the Hebrew writer is saying that Jesus is our high priest. He's our high priest, and you say, well, yeah, okay, groovy, that sounds nice, but that really doesn't mean a lot to us, maybe. And yet it does mean a lot to us. And it meant everything to those that were originally hearing that. It was huge. Because they would have known that the high priest in that day and time was their advocate. The high priest was their representative. The high priest was the one on the people's side, making the people's case for them to God, speaking to God on their behalf. And the Hebrew writer says, this is Jesus. Jesus represents you, that he's sitting in heaven. He's sitting at the right hand of the throne of God, and he's speaking to God on your behalf. And if that's true, then what does that do to this lie that the enemy's always trying to tell us, that God really doesn't care, that you've messed up enough now, that you'll never be good enough? Verse 15 says, he understands our weaknesses. Understands our weaknesses. Another translation says he sympathizes. It's this idea that he just doesn't watch from a distance. He just doesn't watch from a distance, and he kind of feels a little bad for us, maybe what we're going through down here, but he really doesn't do a whole lot about it. That's not what he does. That's the idea. The idea is that he enters into it and has walked right alongside with us. And so it's like the difference between sort of, you turn on your television, maybe it's late at night, and you see these moving images of kids in a third world country, and they're starving, and they're asking you to send money, and you're moved by that. You have a heart for that, and it's sad. But it's the difference between that or actually going to that third world country, living the way that they live, eating the things that they eat, and entering into it. So that's to say that Jesus didn't just sit up in heaven having, well, gosh, I really feel sorry for him. No, but he came alongside, he sympathized with us, and he came into our situation. He entered into it. He felt what we feel. He experienced what we experience. He knows what it's like. And so because of that, he is our high priest, the Son of God. So what does that mean? Well, look at verse 16. Because of that, we can come boldly to the throne of our gracious God, and there we will receive his mercy, and we will find grace to help us. What does it say? When we need it most. Like when we need it most, we call upon him. And that's kind of the challenge that I would kind of lay before us this week. That the enemy's handing you a script every day that says, hey, you better fix this, whatever the it is in your life. Like whatever it is that's not right, that's not in congruence with God's word or God's will for you. The script says, hey, you better fix this on your own. You need to get it right. You need to fix yourself. You flip that and you start reading from a different script. And in this new script, you claim the truth that God is for you, that God is fighting for you. You claim the truth that you can approach him boldly, because he is our high priest and he knows what we're going through. Now, it says to approach him boldly. Now, some of you, sometimes all of us, we really need help with that, because sometimes we're not bold enough to approach him. Like we need God's help, but what happens is we're kind of waiting. We're waiting for him to come to us. And this is sort of the struggle that we just don't want to reveal what's going on. We want to continue to conceal. But here's the thing about it, and this is just so basic to understanding these things, that whatever is concealed cannot be healed. Like you've got to reveal things for it to be truly healed, because Satan thrives when things are kept in darkness in our lives. You can't heal what you don't reveal. But when we reveal things, we come to him boldly. We say, God, you already know this, but I just need a voice to say, here's the mess, here's the struggle, here's the brokenness. And we ask for his help. And then we, in wisdom, find others that we can trust that might be able to help us. And we reveal what it is that may have been hidden in our lives for years. And God begins to redeem, and God begins to bring healing and hope. So the enemy hands us a script. Says, hey, you fix it on your own. You've made the mess, now you clean it up. Maybe you've gone too far. I don't know, he might say to you. And we've been living by that lie. There was an author a few years ago named William Willimon. He wrote a book. In this book, he talks about an encounter he had with a dying woman. He said that she was in the last stages of lung cancer. She was just gasping day after day for breath. And it was obvious that she was in great pain, that she was exhausted from fighting. And he said when he would go visit her, she always clutched this crucifix that she had, and she would hold on to it daily. And he found out that this crucifix had been given to her by her grandmother when she was a girl, that had been actually carved by a monk in Europe. And it was just this meaningful symbol of her faith and all that it meant to her. William Willimon said that when he entered the room on the last day, he could see that it was the end. And he said to her, hey, would you like me to pray for you? Or since she was Catholic, he said, would you like me to summon a priest? And he said that with her last ounce of energy, she held out that crucifix, and which depicted the body of Christ nailed to the cross. And she said, thank you, but that won't be necessary. I already have a priest. You see, this is Jesus. We talk a lot about Jesus as Lord and Savior, which is true, but he's also our high priest. He's our advocate. He's our representative. He is the person that you go to for help. And when we start reading from that script, we start reading every day from the script of Hebrews chapter 4, we claim this truth and we hold on to it with our hands. And when the enemy tries to feed us lies, we counter with the truth that he does care, that he does love me, that I could never stray too far away. You start telling yourself that truth that we have in Jesus, who represents us, and he understands what we're going through, and because he understands, we can approach his throne with confidence. We can be assured that we will find grace. We could not fix our own sin. We just couldn't do it. Only one person could fix our sin. Romans 5:6 puts it this way. You see, at just the right time, while we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. But God demonstrates his love for us in this, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While we were still powerless. We couldn't do it on our own. Only Jesus. And he hung on the cross. It was something only he could do. He had to do. It was the only thing that could fix the it of our sin. He paid the price alone, and only he could do it. Crucified by himself, taking the consequences of our sin, so that we would never think that we have to try and fix ourselves all alone, but that he would be our high priest who offered himself as a once and for all time sacrifice for sins. And so, as Hebrews 4 says, let us come boldly to the throne of our gracious God. And when we do, we there will receive his mercy. We'll find his grace just when we need it the most.